Guys, let's get into a video that I think is very important. I've seen a lot of issues like this throughout my career. In aviation, it's about the oil level in the Squirrel helicopter's reservoir. If you look here at the engine oil reservoir, this is the filling cap, this is a ventilation line, and this one here is the return line. If you look at the sight glass, you'll see the minimum and maximum levels. So the maintenance manual says the following: the oil level must not be below the minimum or above the maximum. Aloysio, but why is this helicopter showing such a low level? Because this helicopter has been sitting idle for 2 days. If you look here at the top, there's a heat exchanger. It's positioned higher than the reservoir. And if you draw a line here from the engine to the reservoir, this oil level is below that line. The engine. It has a valve on the other side that, when the engine stops, prevents the oil from leaving the reservoir and going into the engine. But this valve doesn't have a perfect seal. So if the aircraft stays parked for too long, the oil level will drop below the minimum. So in this specific case with this helicopter, the pilot should have checked the oil level when he shut it down. And when I check the oil level, the engine manufacturer's maintenance manual and the airframe manufacturers say that the oil level must be checked up to 15 minutes after shutting down the engine, because at that moment, all the oil is returned to the reservoir. We have to remember that one of the characteristics of this engine's oil system is that it's a total flow system. It uses all the oil for engine lubrication, so if you have a smaller amount of oil, consequently it will run a little hotter. That's natural, that's just physics. So what needs to be done here? Let's say the pilot didn't check. The pilot has to check, has to start the engine. And then, within 15 minutes, the mechanic tops it up without exceeding the maximum. You can't keep flying below the minimum. What I see out there is a myth that all reservoirs have to fly with the oil at the lowest possible level here, so it doesn't throw oil out through the exhaust pipe. But I'm going to explain some reasons why it does throw oil through the exhaust pipe. The first reason is this bend here, this ventilation tube. It goes all the way to the exhaust pipe. Later, I'll show you back there. The mechanic starts having problems here with this hose. He starts to shorten it. And this bend gets reduced because it's meant for when the helicopter pitches nose up or nose down, it works like a siphon. This is the first problem that causes oil to be expelled through the ventilation line. So this ventilation line loops around here and enters into something called the breather. The breather is a centrifugal separator that separates air from oil. If you have a magnetic seal inside here, and if the magnetic seal is broken, how does the mechanic handle this? He removes this hose here and activates it to see if anything comes out. Oil is the second reason why the engine consumes oil. The third reason, this pipe comes around the back. Please go around the back. Look, it goes around the back. And the second reason, you see this pipe comes and sits right here on the exhaust pipe. These clamps break. And then what happens? This pipe shifts either closer to or farther from the wall. The farther this pipe is from the wall, the lower the airflow. The closer I bring it to the wall, the less airflow there is. As this pipe moves over here, it creates a siphon effect. So you have to check if this clamp, along with these two, is in place. If it breaks here, this pipe shifts. Why? When the fluid reaches the wall from where it is being drained, the closer it is to the wall, the lower its speed, tending towards zero. For example, who at home hasn't cleaned the fan blade before? And why does the fan blade get dirty? Because the airspeed over the wall, right at that minimum, is almost zero. That's the dust experiment. So these are the reasons. So the oil level here must never be below the minimum or above the maximum. And always remember, it's up to 15 minutes after shutdown. Where is this written, Aloysio? In the check P, it's in the maintenance manual. And then it refers to the maintenance manual, stating the maximum and minimum levels. It's still within the 15 minutes, still 7 minutes. There's a screen inside here. You can't remove it to add oil faster. This screen also protects the engine's oil system. The word maximum disappeared, and you stop. Okay, that's fine. This is the level you need to leave the reservoir. It's within the 15 minutes. We'll start it up later. I'll show you. You can't remove this screen from inside the reservoir. There are some mechanics who remove this component to add the oil much faster. Unfortunately, contaminants can easily get inside. So the level might even go down a bit more simply because it was running without oil for some time. But now the tendency is for it to stabilize. Then he's going to put the lock in place. The manual you're seeing there is Chapter 05-40067 of the Maintenance Manual, which is the P inspection, also known as deli check. It comes in here and gives you instructions to check the engine oil level. You inspect the entire oil circuit and check the level. If you have any doubts about the level, go to chapter 79003, which I will show later. You check all the fastenings and the locking of the filler cap. What's important here is what's written. Make a note of it. It is not permitted to add oil with the engine cold. If in doubt, perform a function test. That is, run the engine to check the oil when it's hot. Check the oil level up to 15 minutes after shutting off the engine. In other words, we cannot check the oil level after 15 minutes. And after starting the engine, add the necessary oil. In other words, everyone, it is only permitted to add oil up to 15 minutes after shutdown. Still referring to chapter 790,000 of the maintenance manual, which provides instructions for filling and draining the engine oil. What do we have here? In item B, fill the engine oil tank up to the mark shown in the sight glass as specified in item 4 of the maintenance manual. What does that mean? Take note of this. The upper mark shows the maximum level and the lower mark shows the minimum level. So there is a maximum mark and a minimum mark. The oil level should never be below the lower mark. Another note, when refilling and topping up the oil level, do not exceed the maximum level. In other words, I cannot have the level above the maximum line or below the minimum line. This is the correct service procedure for the reservoir, and remember, it should be done within 15 minutes after shutdown.